Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Jai Kunja Bihari Jai Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Gopi Jana Vallabha Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jasya Jashodanandana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jaya Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Srimad His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanand. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Shishiguru and Shigoranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summon Bonon, Chapter 47, the Son of the Bee, text number 61. Asam aho charanare nujusangahamsyam. That's not the right meter. Asam naho charanare nujusam ahamsyam. Brindavane king apugulma latau shadinam. Jadustyajan swajanang arya patam chahitva. Bejur mukunda padabin srutibir bimikriam. Asam aho charanare nujusam ahamsham. Brindavane king apigulma latau shadinam. Jadustyajan swajana arya patam hachathitva. Bejur mukunda padabin srutibir bimigriam. Asam aho charanare nujusham ahasyam. Brindavane king apigulma latau shadhinam. Jadustyajan swajanan arya patam chahitva. Bejur mukunda padabin srutibim bimigriam. Please chant. Asham ahom charanare nujusham ahamsyam. Brindavane king apigulma latau shadhinam. Jadustyajan swajanan arya patam chajitva. Bejur mukunda padabin srutibir mimikriam. Asam aho charanare nujusham ahamsyam. Brindavane king apigulma latau shadhinam. Jadustyajan swajanan arya patam chahitva. Bejur mukunda padabin srutibim bimigriam. Krishna. Asam aho charanarenu yusham ahansya. Vrindavane kingapi gulmalatau shadhinam. Jadustyajam swajanan arya patham chahitva. Bhejur mukunda padabin srutibir bimrigyam. Asam of the gopis. Aho, O. Charanarenu, the Lord, the dust of the lotus feet. Jusham, devoted to. Ahamsham, let me become. Vrindavane, in Vrindavana. Kim api, anyone. Gulmalata oshadinam, among bushes, creepers and herbs. Ya, they who, dustyayam, very difficult to give up, swajanam, family members, arya patam, the path of chastity, cha, and hitwa, giving up, bheju, worship, mukunda padaving, the lotus feet of Mukunda, Krishna, Shrutibihi, by the Vedas, Bimrigyam, to be searched for. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki, Shishi Kishore Kishori Ki. The gopis of Vrindavan have given up the association of their husbands, sons, and other family members who are very difficult to give up, and they have forsaken the path of chastity to take shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda Krishna, which one should search for by Vedic knowledge. Oh, let me be fortunate enough to be one of the bushes, creepers, or herbs in Vrindavan, because the gopis trample them and bless them with the dust of their lotus feet. Purport. The word meaning and translation for this verse are taken from Srila Prabhupada's English rendering of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 7:47. Sri Uddhava here shows the perfect Vaishnava attitude of humility. He does not pray to be equal to the gopis in their exalted stage of love, but rather to take birth as a bush or a creeper in Vrindavan, so that when they walk upon him, he will get the dust of their feet and thus be blessed. The shy gopis will never agree to give such blessings to a great personality like Uddhava. Therefore, he cleverly sought to get such mercy by taking birth as a plant in Vrindavan. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Romapada Swami Iti Namine. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, wonderful and famous passage from the Bhagavatam, in which Uddhava comes to this conclusion that after appreciating the supreme position of worshiping, of a worshipper from the gopis, he and the inhabitants of Vrindavan, as a matter of fact, he desired to become simply a simple bush or a creeper or a blade of grass, sometimes they said, to receive the dust from the lotus feet of the gopis of Vrindavan and the inhabitants of Vrindavan. In the purport, it's explained that this shows the perfect Vaishnava attitude of humility. And it's quite remarkable because I'm going to read some, continue from what we were speaking yesterday, and but also explain a little bit some of the different gopis, the classes of gopis that serve Krishna in Vrindavan. And specifically, one that has been quoted are the Shrutiganas, or the gopis who in their previous lives were the personified Vedas, of the authorities of the Vedas. And so how they received the benediction to become gopis, because they asked for that benediction. But in this case, Uddhava is not asking for the benediction to become a gopi, which, may be something that we may think, like after appreciating that exalted position, one would like to become a follower of the gopis and be participating with the gopis in the service of Krishna, Radha and Krishna. But Uddhava didn't. He prayed to become a simple blade of grass. And this is a wonderful example to follow. In fact, Lord Chaitanya tells us that one has to become humble like a blade of grass. Trinad api sunichena. We have to become humble. We have to be humble like a blade of grass, like that. So it is an important principle. And at the end, the principle is that one have to follow, one have to take shelter on the lotus feet of the gopis of Vrindavan. And that's also the recommendation of Lord Chaitanya in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Gopi Bhartar Pada Kamalayor. This Pada Kamalayor is that one have to take shelter and worship the lotus feet of and follow in the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan. Gopi Bhartar Pada Kamalayor. Dasa, Dasa, Anudas. We repeat this. It's something, is part of the identity that Sri Chaitanya has given us to accept and to fully focus and follow. This is part of what is going to be concluded in the discussion from Lord Chaitanya and Venkatavata. that in order to be able to enter into this very intimate association with Lord Krishna in the mood of the gopis, one have to become a follower of the gopis. So one have to take shelter on their lotus feet. And so Lord Chaitanya gives us that identity, because Lord Chaitanya, this is what is offering to the whole world, to have entrance into this most intimate type of worship and service, which is quite beyond any type of imagination. Just as Uddhava is explaining that this type of benediction is not available to Lord Brahma, to Lord Shiva, to the great sages and meditators, not even to Lakshmi Devi. And this is the whole theme. This is what we're going to read in this discussion of Lord Chaitanya and Venkatavata. So it's a very important principle to be understood. Before going into that, I would like to read the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Srila Jiva Goswami, and Srila Sanatana Goswami on this particular verse. So let's do that now. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on this verse. Quote, as it has been proved that the gopis' love is the most rare to obtain, it will be improper to have a desire for it. Therefore, it was with lack of judgment that I have said that Mahabhava, which those desiring liberation, those liberated and devotees like me desire. Actually, that doesn't. Let me read that again. Sometimes, to make more sense of it. As it has been proved that the gopis' love is the most rare to obtain, it will be improper to have desire for it. Therefore, it was with lack of judgment that I have said that Mahabhava, which those desiring liberation, those liberated and devotees like me desire, in verse 58. But now, with consideration, let me express my desire for that Mahabhava anyway. I desire to be born as some low shrub, creeper, or grass upon which the gopis place their feet. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is expressing Uddhava's inner thinking heart. Quote, but what is the supreme excellence of their worship? That you desire their food thus, rather than that of Lakshmi and others? Question to Uddhava. And Uddhava will say, quote, I have never seen such intense worship in which they give up all consideration of social customs, shyness, and sense control. Every night, giving up social restraints which are as hard as thunderbolts, they go to meet Krishna, and returning, do even consider what is the correct route. If I remain a grass on the path, their feet will touch my head. If I beg pitifully 1,000 times, they will not put their foot thus on my head. Therefore, my life will be successful if I am born as a blade of grass. End of quote. Srila Jiva Goswami comments, Uddhava desired to follow the gopis who serve the feet of Krishna, difficult to obtain by the Vedas, and whose attachment led them to transgress regular dharma. Since they were actually eternal associates who were not aware of birth pastimes by the arrangements of Yogamaya, deciding to obtain their food thus, he desires to become a shrub in Braja, which received that dust. Aho! This expressed lamentation for an unattainable desire. He desires to be a shrub in Vrindavan, since that is where the gopis wander close by. He does not want to become a tree, since they are too high. They do not receive the gopis' food dust. He mentions shrubs, creepers, and grasses in that particular order because they are successively lower to the ground and more capable of receiving the food dust. His strongest desire is to be grass. It also shows his humility. The plants are successively lower. He prays ultimately to be grass. In the last half of this verse, he sings their glories. The one method of obtaining his feed was previously mentioned, the Rudra Bhava. The word Mukunda means he who awards liberation. This indicates that the Rudra Bhava was more difficult to obtain than liberation. The Lord is stingy in giving prema. Muktin dadati karhichit smana bhakti yogam. The Lord gives liberation, but not bhava bhakti. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:7-18. Those feet are sought by the Vedas as the highest human goal. What did they do to obtain those feet? They gave up family rules and scriptural rules which were difficult to give up. As previously mentioned, Lakshmi and others cannot give them up. They obtained his feet with the understanding that this was the highest goal for all persons mentioned in all scriptures. The cause was not just having greater attachment than others, but having unparalleled attachment. Those feet are sought by the Vedas. This indicates the eternal nature of their bhava and its supreme position. The gopis obtained those feet. They quickly obtained them. He could not free himself. This is an eternal relationship between Krishna and the gopis. Since Uddhava, a confidential devotee, prayed for a birth related to the gopis' feet, he thought that this was possible in Vrindavan alone. This indicates that Krishna and the gopis were attached to Vrindavan. Srila Sanatana Goswami's commentary is very, very long. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to go to back to that where we left yesterday, which is, in one sense, explain very much why is Uddhava praying for this and taking this position, recognizing also this supreme position of the gopis. So yesterday we left when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quoted the verse, yesterday's verse. Remember, just for a recap, Lord Chaitanya met Venkatavata, who was the highest priest in the Sri Rangan temple, part of the Sri Sampradaya, who are worshippers of Lakshmi Narayan. And Lord Chaitanya asked him why Lakshmi Devi wanted to leave Vaikuntha and join the Rasa Lila dance of Krishna in Vrindavan, with Krishna in Vrindavan. So, and, he questioned in sort of a light manner, Venkatavata, isn't that, she's how you say, not being chaste, by doing this. And then Venkatavata explained, no, Krishna and Lord Vishnu are one and the same. So there's no breach of chastity by Lakshmi. There's no wrong by Lakshmi. So, so again, Lord Chaitanya responded, I know that there is no fault on the part of the goddess of fortune, but still, she could not enter the rasa dance. We hear this from the revealed scriptures. And then Lord Chaitanya quoted yesterday verse, Uddhava, saying, when Lord Sri Krishna was dancing with the gopis in the Rasa Lila, the gopis were embraced around the neck by the Lord's arms. This transcendental favor was never bestowed upon the goddess of fortune and or the other consorts in the spiritual world. Nor was such a thing ever imagined by the most beautiful girls in the heavenly planets, girls whose bodily luster and aroma exactly resembles the beauty and fragrance of lotus flowers. And what to speak of worldly women who may be very, very beautiful according to material estimation. Lord Chaitanya continued, but can you tell me why the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, could not enter the rasa dance? The authorities of the Vedic knowledge could enter the dance and associate with Krishna. Great sages conquer the mind and senses by practicing the mystic yoga system and controlling the breath. Those engaging in mystic yoga, they see the super soul within their hearts and ultimately enter into the impersonal Brahman. But even the enemies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead obtain that position simply by thinking of the Supreme Lord. However, the damsels of Braja, the gopis, being attracted by the beauty of Krishna, simply wanted to embrace him and his arms, which are like serpents. Thus, the gopis ultimately tasted the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, we, Upanishads, can also taste the nectar of his lotus feet by following in the footsteps of the gopis. These are the particular prayers of the personified Vedas. By eventually they ask that they desire to become gopis, they desire that benediction. So these are the Shruti Gana gopis, or the gopis, the group of gopis that in their previous life they were the personified Vedas. So there's a little story of that. We'll see if we have time to go through that. Having been asked by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu why the goddess of fortune could not enter into the rasa dance, whereas the authorities on Vedic knowledge could, Venkatavata replied, I cannot enter the mysteries of this behavior. Venkatavata then said, I'm an ordinary human being. Since my intelligence is very limited and I'm easily agitated, my mind cannot enter within the deep ocean of the pastimes of the Lord. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. You know the purport of your activities, and the person who you enlighten can also understand your pastimes. The Lord replied, Lord Krishna has a special characteristic. He attracts everyone's heart by the mellow of his personal conjugal love. By following in the footsteps of the inhabitants of the planet known Brajaloka or Goloka Vrindavan, one can obtain the shelter of the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. However, in that planet, the inhabitants do not know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There, someone may accept him as a son and sometimes bind him to a grinding mortar. Someone else may accept him as an intimate friend and obtaining victory over him, playfully mount his shoulders. The inhabitants of Brajabhumi know Krishna as the son of Maharaj Nanda, the king of Brajabhumi, and they consider that they can have no relationship with the Lord in the rasa of opulence. One who worships the Lord by following in the footsteps of the inhabitants of Brajabhumi obtain him in the transcendental planet of Braja, where he is known as the son of Maharaj Nanda. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then quoted, quote, "The Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, the son of Mother Yashoda, is accessible to those devotees engaged in a spontaneous loving service. But he is not easily accessible to mental speculators, to those striving for self-realization by severe austerities and penances, or to those who consider the body the same as the self. The authorities in the Vedic literature, who are known as Shrutiganas, worship Lord Krishna in the ecstasy of the gopis and follow in their footsteps. The personified authorities on the Vedic hymns acquired bodies like those of the gopis and took birth in Brajabhumi. In those bodies, they were allowed to enter into the Lord's Rasa Lila dance. Lord Krishna belongs to the cowherd community, and the gopis are the dearmost lovers of Krishna. Although the wife of the denizen of the heavenly planets are most opulent within the material world, neither they nor any other woman in the material universe can acquire Krishna's association. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, wanted to enjoy and at the same time retain her spiritual body. Let's listen to this, because this is the reason why Lakshmi Devi could not enter the Rasa Lila dance. So here's the reason. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, wanted to enjoy Krishna and at the same time retain her spiritual body in the form of Lakshmi. However, she did not follow in the footsteps of the gopis in her worship of Krishna. Vyasadeva, the supreme authority on Vedic literature, composed a verse beginning Nayam Shukapo Bhagavam, because no one can enter into the Rasa Lila dance in any body other than that of a gopi. Before this explanation was given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Venkatavata thought that Sri Narayan was the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thinking in this way, Venkatavata believed that worship of Narayan was the supreme form of worship, superior to all other processes of devotional service, for it was followed by Sri Vaishnava's disciples of Ramanuja Acharya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has understood these misconceptions of Venkatavatas, and to correct it, the Lord talked so much in a joking way. The Lord then continued, "My dear Venkatavata, please do not continue doubting. Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is the conclusion of the Vedic literatures. Lord Narayan, the opulent form of Krishna, attracts the mind of the goddess of fortune and her followers. All these incarnations of Godhead, this is, he quotes from the famous verse from the Bhagavatam, all these incarnations of Godhead are either plenary portions or part of the plenary portions of the Purusha avatars. But Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. In every age, he protects the world through his different features when the world is disturbed by the enemies of Indra. So, Srimati Lakshmi Devi desired to enter into the Rasalila dance, and she performed many celestial years of austerities to do so. But the reason she could not enter was because she couldn't give up her mood of worship, which is in awe and reverence. And also, she didn't took shelter or became a follower or took shelter of the lotus feet of the gopis. So, the position of the gopis is far superior. It is explained. And therefore, to be able to enter into Rasalila dance, you can only do if you acquire the form of a gopi. So, the difference between when Lord Chaitanya points out that Lakshmi could not enter because she couldn't give up the desire to maintain her opulent or her spiritual form as, as the consort of Lord Vishnu, which is opulent, and therefore couldn't enter. On the other hand, the Vedas, the personified Vedas, they took shelter of the gopis and became a follower of the gopis and meditated on that, took shelter on that. And there they obtained the bodies of gopis and being able to enter into the Rasalila dance. We also hear that from different personalities who desire to enter into the Rasalila, and they were given the bodies of gopis. One is Lord Shiva, and the other one that I can think is Narada Muni. So both of them were able to enter into the Rasalila by assuming the form of a gopi by the blessings of Purnamashi. And so in the case of Lord Shiva, he became Gopishwara, Gopishwara Shiva. It's a form of Lord Shiva as a gopi. And you can still, when you visit Vrindavan, there is a famous temple of Lord Shiva that is Gopishwara Shiva. It's very beautiful. And same with Narada Muni. There is a place in Govardhan that is called Narada Kund, in which Narada performed his service. That's where he wrote the book in the Dharai Bhakti Sutras, yes. But to enter into the Rasalila, he took bath in Kushum Sarovar, and then came out as a gopi, and then he was able to enter like that. So, so the position of the gopis is supreme, and this is what Uddhava is appreciating. So I was going to read also this very extended explanation from our acharyas in terms of the different gopis that are there. that includes there's two types of gopis. There's some of the gopis that are just direct expansions of Srimati Radharani. So they're Nitya Siddhas, so they're eternally liberated personalities, and some of them are part of the Ladini Shakti, so they're Shakti forms. And some of them are living entities that are sadhana siddhis, or they'll be able to reach that position by a process of purification. And so there's a whole breakdown of these different groups of gopis. It's very important to understand in this context, And one, how to become a follower of the gopis, because that's more or less the path that is, well, not more or less, that is the path that Lord Chaitanya has given us, to fully take shelter and become a follower of the gopis. So, and it have to be understood very, very carefully, because you cannot do this in a immature or light way. There's a very serious and gradual procedure of how to take shelter or become a follower, of this path that Lord Chaitanya has given us. So there's a bit of a breakdown here. I read. This is actually the purport of chapter 10, Canto 10, chapter 29, text number 9, which the translation is like this. Some gopis, however, could not manage to get out of their houses, and instead they remained home with eye closed, meditating upon him in pure love. So this is the chapter that explains about the Rasalila dance and the gopis who were not allowed to join the Rasalila. So they were, this is what was discussed today by Uddhava. So in the purport, our Acharya's comments on this verse as follows. In this context, we will make our analysis according to the method described in Srila Rupa Goswami's Ujjvala Nilamani. There are two categories of gopis: the eternally perfect, Nitya Siddhas, and those who have become perfect by practicing Bhakti Yoga, the Sadhana Siddhas. The Sadhana Siddhas are of two categories: those who belong to special groups and those who do not. And there are also two classes of gopis belonging to the special groups, namely the Shruticharis, who came from the group of the personified Vedas, and the Rishicharis, who came from the group of sages who saw Lord Ramachandra in the Dandakaranya forest. The same fourfold categorization of the gopis is given in the Padma Purana. Quote, "It is understood that some of the gopis are personified Vedic literatures, while others are reborn sages, daughters of cowherd, or demigod maidens. But by no means, my dear king, are any of them ordinary humans. Here we are informed," end of quote, that. "Here we are informed that although the gopis appear to be human cowherd girls, they actually were not. Thus, the contention that they are mortals is refuted." Quote, the daughters of cowherds refers here as Gopakanyas, must be eternally perfect, since we never hear of them having executed any sadhana. The apparent sadhana of worshipping goddess Katyayani in the role of gopis merely manifests their manner of playing like human beings. And the Bhagavatam narrates the account of this worship only to show how they have fully taken on the role of cowherd girls. Important thing to understand. So, when we talk about the eternally liberated, the eternally perfect associates of the Lord, they don't need to go through rules and regulations, asana practices. For there, they have perfect, unalloyed love for Krishna. They perform this, what Uddhava quoted, Bhava Bhakti is there already. They're perfected. Or they're perfect. They're not perfected, they're perfect. So, but for others, for conditioned souls, we have to go to the practice process of sadhana bhakti. Quote, the Gopakanya gopis are actually Nitya Siddhas, eternally perfect devotees of the Lord. Is established by the statement in Brahma Samhita, Ananda Chimoja Rasa Pratibhavitaabhi, which prove that they are the Lord's spiritual pleasure potency, Ladini Shakti. Similarly, we have the words of the Gautamiya Tantra, Ladini Ya Mahashakti. For the corroboration of their eternal perfection is that these gopis, being co-eternal with Lord Krishna, their lover, are mentioned along with him in the 18-syllable mantra, the 10-syllable mantra, and others, and also that the worship of these mantras are also the Shrutis that present them, have been in existence in the beginnings of beginningless time. I didn't have time to check, I've heard before about this 10-syllable mantra and the 18-syllable mantra. But I'm assuming it have to be with the Gopi Jana Balaba, that type of, but I'm not sure. Continue. The Devakanyas, daughters of the demigods, who are mentioned in the verse beginning Sambhavas Tvamarastriya, are explained by Sri Ujjvala Nilamani as partial expansions of the gopis who are eternally perfect. So these are we hear that when the demigods went to the shore of the milk ocean to pray to Lord Vishnu to please descend to relieve Mother Earth of all the demoniac personalities who were harassing her, Lord Vishnu assured them that he will descend. And he ordered them to actually start to take birth in the land of Vrindavan. So some of these demigoddesses, took birth as gopis. But they're explained as partial expansions of the gopis who are eternally perfect. Continue here. That the Shruti-chari gopis, remember the Shruti-chari are the personified Vedas. The personified Vedas are sadhana siddha is understood from the following words of theirs quoted in the Brihad Vamana Purana. Quote, "Since we have seen your face, which possesses the beauty of millions of cupids, our minds have become lusty after you, like those of young girls. We have forgotten all allurements. We have developed the desire to act towards you as do the gopis do. We have developed the desire to act towards you as do the gopis who dwell in your transcendental planet and who manifest the nature of Cupid by worshipping you with the idea that you are their paramour." So, this is part of the narration in this Purana in which the personified Vedas, they were praying to the Lord in Svetadvip, and they offered these very, very eloquent and beautiful prayers to the Lord. In Svetadvip, the Lord resides as Shirodakshai Vishnu, which is the manifestation of the Lord as a super soul. And he lies in this ocean of milk. So the personified Vedas offer these beautiful, beautiful prayers to the Lord. And the Lord, being pleased with them, he says, "Choose a benediction, whatever your heart desires, what is difficult to obtain for they with whom I'm pleased." Oh, the Lord asks, what is difficult to obtain for those with whom I am pleased? The personified Vedas ask this benediction. Because you are beyond the material mind and material worlds, we cannot perfectly understand you. If you wish to give us a benediction, then please directly show us your transcendental form, which the scholars of the Puranas say is full of bliss. Hearing this, the Lord showed them his own abode, where there is only bliss and there are neither decay nor death. But there is the forest named Vrindavan, which is opulent with beautiful forests of trees that fulfill all desires, and which brings happiness in every season. When there is a hill named Govardhan, which has beautiful caves and swiftly moving streams, which is made of jewels and precious minerals, and which is filled with graceful birds, where there is the Yamuna, which is the best of rivers, which has pure and delicious water, which is filled with lotuses, swans, and other flowers and birds, and which have shores made of precious jewels, and where the infallible Lord, whose form is that of a youth, stood among many gopis, intoxicated by tasting the nectar of many rasa dances. Having revealed these, the Lord said, quote, "What more should I do for you? Tell me, you have seen my realm. There is no benediction better than seeing it." The personified Veda said, they say, "When we see you in this way, more handsome than millions of Kamadevas, our hearts become troubled with amorous desires, and we yearn to become beautiful girls. We yearn to become beautiful gopis in Goloka who worship you as their lover." See, Hari said, "Although your glorious desire is impossible and can never be obtained, I will grant it. It will become true. When a new Brahman is born to create the universe, and the time of the Saraswata Kalpa arrives, you will become gopis in Vraja, on the earth in Bharatvarsha, In the circle of Mathura, in Vrindavan, in the rasa dance circle, I will become your beloved. Passionately loving me as your paramour, you will all become perfect. So that is how the Vedas became, the personified Vedas became gopis. Time is passing and still more to cover with this. I read one more of, well, there's an explanation of the Rishichari gopis. We hear about those. Those are the ones, the sages of the Dandakaranya forest, who also were blessed by Lord Ramachandra were benedicted to become also gopis. And then, yeah, well, those are the special sadhana siddha gopis, the special groups. And now, the ones that are not part of that special groups are devotees who are, by the process of sadhana, of devotional service, then we can achieve perfection, especially by taking shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Lord Chaitanya's followers. And the principle that Lord Chaitanya is giving us, especially the one he was highlighting to Vyankatavata and in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, is to take this position of becoming an insignificant servant of the gopis of Vrindavan, and take full shelter of their lotus feet. And this is Sri Uddhava's conclusion, that fully taking shelter of the lotus feet of the gopis, and that's the perfection of his life. He desired just the dust of the lotus feet of the gopis. And that type of mood is the mood that we, as followers of Lord Chaitanya, are directed to cultivate. So I'm going to stop here. Is any comments or questions? I think Atma Ramprabhu was asking.
Hi, Krishna Prabhu. So the Shruti gopis and the Brahmanas who became gopis because they associated with Lord Ram and Dandakaranya first, are they still called those gopis in Goloka as well? Like, is that the specific class they're called in Goloka now?
Yes, that's what I understand, but I'm not an expert on this. I understand that one first, when you reach, pure devotional service, and you can enter, and you follow in the footsteps or take shelter of the devotees in Vrindavan, then you take birth in Brajabhumi, in the earthly Goloka Vrindavan, and then you serve there, and then you qualify yourself to go back to Goloka Vrindavan, the spiritual world. No, they didn't. No, that's the point. That's the difference between there's a sadhana, siddha, gopis, meaning that you elevate yourself through sadhana, into that position, and that there's the Nitya Siddhas that are eternally liberated, and they are explained that they're not living entities. They're just part of the Ladini Shakti of the Lord.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for your class. Where are the you reminded me, you mentioned the ocean of milk, the churning of the ocean of milk, I believe.
Yes.
And it reminded me of a pastime, the churning of the ocean of milk, that related to today's verse, where the gopis left their husbands, their family, their friends, etc. And in the churning of the ocean of milk, it's described when they churned the ocean of milk, Lakshmi emerged, and she was looking for the man of her dreams. So she has a very series of beautiful verses in the 8th canto, chapter 8, where Lakshmi describes. She says she was looking for the all-attractive one, somebody very beautiful, and we see women in this world. But she says, although somebody may be very beautiful or powerful, they cannot control the power of time. So they're not perfect. Where's your husband? He died. Or she says, somebody may ask us, where's your husband? His character died. She says, this other personalities we see can't control their lusty desires. So she says, I couldn't find anybody to take shelter except Krishna or Narayana, because he's controlled time, he could control lusty desires. So my question is this. It reminded me of what Sevananda said years ago or something to the extent that we're parts and parcels of Krishna. So the analogy was, if you go to a bakery and you ask for a cake and they give you crumbs, you're not going to be satisfied with that. So we see that we're parts and parcels of Krishna. We could partially control our senses, but Krishna could fully control his senses. So we're looking for so my question is, what do you say to people who still, despite having so much knowledge of this, who still argue with their friends, their spouses? Why aren't you perfect? Why aren't you Christian? We see that's where all arguments come from. What do you say people, devotees or people who continue to waste their time looking for Krishna, and you're not going to find him in any other devotee even? So what do you say to a person who's, or devotee specifically, we have all this knowledge that we're not going to find a perfect relationship? So what do you say to somebody who keeps hoping for hope against hope?
Yeah. I'm doing this fantastic course right now. It's called Hermeneutics. And you should definitely check that. I mean, everybody should check that. It's being put together by this body of devotees who were assigned. It's called the Shastric Advisory Council. Shastric Advisory Council for the GBC. And they put in together this, very systematic traditional system in the Vedic tradition of how to understand, the philosophy and everything, actually everything. And the first hermeneutic path you have to do, actually, before even trying to understand a particular statement of the Shastras or a particular application of the Shastra, the first thing to do is to do with yourself, is to have to be introspective. So it's quite fantastic, then it tells you that you have first to understand things, about how committed you are to your sadhana practices. How committed are you to actually live a life, a life of purity, in the mode of goodness, morality, all that type of things. How committed you to your spiritual master, all these questions, what is my adhikari? Am I qualified to try to, do I have the experience and understanding to try? All these different introspective questions before applying something. So I was just marveling at that, yesterday. I was doing this course with the head of this whole group is Mother Urmila, who is brilliant. And so if we not to understand that we have to cultivate this character, these qualities, and we have to make an effort to. It may not be natural, but if we're committed for that, and it's just part of, it's what we signed for, right? To be Krishna conscious, we signed for developing these qualities of a devotee. There's 24 qualities, and we have to, seriously, it's not just something that we, it's a list that we have to memorize or remember sometimes, or, quote and things like that. But we have to seriously trying to change ourselves, to acquire those qualities, to cultivate those qualities. So that's the beginning of everything. So I asked this question to Mother Urmila, that the fact is that it's not just for studying and for analyzing and for understanding the application of the Shastras, but it's actually for everything we do in Krishna consciousness. Every single thing, the way I relate with my spouse, or I relate with a friend or another devotee or someone, all these things, that's what is called Vaishnava Achar, or Vaishnava, the etiquette of a Vaishnava. It's a culture of a Vaishnava. We have to become culture as Vaishnavas. The reason we have conflicts among ourselves is because we haven't imbibed the culture of a Vaishnava. We're still sort of being influenced by these mundane cultures, that we are conditioned to. So that is so self-centered, and with more or less selfish, in one sense, motivated, that we're banned. Is natural that these things happen, conflict happen. So I think that's something that was quite revealing. Everything we do, every service we do, we have to internalize, we have to be introspective about our motivations, our desires, our commitment, our honest and sincere effort to become, Krishna conscious. That's, I would say. Is that okay? Krishna, yeah.
I was reflecting on the point that Uddhava chose the route of wanting to be a lowly plant form, so that the lotus feet of the gopis could touch that plant form were he in that position. And I was reflecting on it because it's so much, just your point of the cultural aspect, it's so much a part of culture or Vaishnava culture to actually glorify from a very humble position, as opposed to having the mood of wanting to surpass. So in the same way that Uddhava is actually glorifying the gopis for their extraordinary love for Lord Krishna, it's a reflection on how glorious he is too, for this very subtle understanding that he has. It's not that he's aspiring, as was mentioned, to be in their position, but rather to receive, from a humble position from them, their mercy without directly asking for it, because he's understanding they're not going to bestow
Right.
that kind of blessing on him. So I was just thinking how it's actually such a reflection on the glory of Uddhava.
Yes, and that's what is being given to us, to actually follow. That's the mood. That's Lord Chaitanya's teachings. Again, I mentioned it like that. So yeah, I also noticed that he is asking the blessings that he is asking. He could ask. He's Krishna's dear friend. He could ask Krishna, just like the Vedas ask. After seeing this, we just want to be there. But Uddhava didn't. So Uddhava's position is even more glorious, because he didn't approach Krishna, because Krishna sent him to witness Vrindavan and witness all that, witness the love of the gopis. But Uddhava just simply in awe desire just to be, a blade of grass, so you can get all the dust. So this is the mood. This is what we ought to follow. I'm going to stop here. I mean, we can go on. This is a very beautiful subject matter, but because of time. I don't know, sometimes I get heavy with Jai Baladev, so I have to follow. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai.